Hello and welcome to our Line Opinion panelists. This week we're joined by Tom Garrity of the Garrity Group Public Relations. Next we have Rebecca Latham. She's Chief Executive Director of Girl Scouts of New Mexico. And welcome back Attorney Laura Sanchez, one of our regulars as well. All right guys, the major story dominating New Mexico headlines isn't something we expected to be talking about in early to mid-April. Several wildfires are burning in our state right now, as you know, and with a continued drought in the long-term forecast, the situation is looking bleak. Now that said, crews are doing everything they can to control these fires, and we wish them well, but some of them actually started as prescribed burns. Those are meant to keep larger scale fires from happening in the first place. Now it seems like we won't have much of an opportunity to carry out that maintenance. Rebecca, how did we get to this point? Is it a prescribed burn problem solely, or is there something else going on here that has exploded all these fires across our state?
Well, we know without a doubt that that issues with our climate, a double La Nina year, I think we know that that those things, it's beyond human control, that New Mexico is in such a bad drought state, but it is questionable. Then why haven't we learned from our mistakes in the past with regards to prescribed burns? The forest supervisor has apologized, has said that this was their mistake, but I don't know how much comfort that brings to those families who have lost livestock, who have been moved out. And so I think under the circumstances, I know that the best intentions are there. It just is, one less fire that had to have been started because we have the others that were not necessarily human caused.
Good point there. Tom, a question's come up a bunch, and I'm sure there's an answer here I'm not aware of. Why don't we do these things in the winter when we don't have to risk the wind?
Yeah, I don't know. I am not, I put out fires for a living, but not these kind of fires. Very tragic, obviously tragic situation throughout the state right now. The thing with backburns, and I've been, back in my news days, I actually, covered several different large scale forest fires and had a chance to learn a little bit about, the science of setting backburns or, to burn out that brush. And while it is a science, it's not an exact science. I think when we take a look at, Cerro Grande, the infamous fire that impacted Los Alamos, that was started as a backfire. That occurred in the May timeframe. And so, why in New Mexico, the April, March, April, May timeframe instead of, as you mentioned, the winter timeframe? That's a great question. But there are people with a much higher pay grade than I am who have answers to that. But clearly it's impacted the state in a variety of different ways.
That's a good point.
And not to mention the lives of those who have lost property and or lost loved ones in the process.
Laura, interestingly, another immediate issue is firefighter staffing. Now, we did talk about that on the show last season, the season before that, and the season and going. You know what I'm getting at here? The U.S. Forest Service has been working through staffing shortages for years, but now the few firefighters they have are going to be asked to work an even longer wildfire season. Is the out-of-state help the answer? Because there's fires going right now in Oklahoma, in other places. We don't have a whole lot of people nationwide. How do we solve the staffing problem?
Yeah, I think it's a critical issue that we have talked about a lot, and every year we seem to talk about it being a problem, and every year we face this shortage. What's different this year is that it's happening so early. This is absolutely, in my recollection, the earliest I've seen this happening here in the state. Normally it's later in the summer that we start to see these kinds of wildfires. But I think it's important to pay attention to the timing and the reason for that. I think our water issues are definitely escalating. It's getting worse. Some reports say we're in the middle of a mega drought, the worst in modern times, which we're certainly a part of in the West. And it's good that we're at least timing wise, we're not right now competing. Competing is not the right word, but there isn't, for competing scarce resources, I guess, we're not in the same position where California is exploding also with fires. So we've had some hotshot crews come out from California to assist, and they certainly have the experience given their problems that they've faced recently. But I think we have to take a look at that, especially at a time when we have additional revenue from in the state coffers. There should be something done to increase the firefighting personnel and the people that are ready to jump in when there's a crisis like this.
Laura, just to interrupt real quick, did we miss something during this last session? I mean, we had the money, we knew summer was coming, we knew the kind of summer we had before. Did something get missed?
Well, I think a lot of people do feel like there was a missed opportunity, not just when it comes to additional funding for training firefighters and making sure we have enough people throughout the state, but also in terms of water management. There's some people who feel like we should have been putting a lot more money into infrastructure funding. We know that there's a infrastructure bill at the federal level that was passed in late November that has money for infrastructure that includes water infrastructure. So there will be a bump on that, but there needs to be, in many cases, a matching component. Some of that funding goes through existing programs, so it's additional federal funding, a formula based for existing programs. But then there's also competitive grants that are part of that. Many of them require matching components. So the state, I think, is in a position to try to increase that kind of funding. And I think that, our leadership, as well as the public, needs to pay attention more to this kind of proactive, preventive work, rather than just being reactive to the crisis.
I love the last thing you said there, because Rebecca, when you think about it, there really was no room this past session to really kind of squeeze in a very big discussion. On last week's show, for example, a hydrologist from the Natural Resources Conservation Service told our Laura Paskus water totals from snowpack melts and spring runoff are going to reach historic lows again. Drier landscapes, more prone to fires. Everybody knew this during the session. Everybody knew this last fall. What got missed here when it comes to resources and money?
Well, I think they've planned some projects, some infrastructure projects that, the timing seems questionable, because they're doing work they're renovating the El Dorado Dam, which is going to have some major consequences with regards to our water supply. I think it's really, it's unnerving for New Mexico to consistently be in a position of, well, we'll be okay if it rains, because that, again, we cannot control. At least we can't control now long-term climate. We may have a shot, but as far as what's going to happen this summer, we can't control that. So while, yes, there are big, major issues and questions and funding packages that need to be developed for New Mexico's water infrastructure, I think there are also some smaller things that they could have invested in during this last session. When we have this kind of, one shot, flush with cash, a lot of this money, should have been used for non-recurring expenses. So it's disappointing that some of the water infrastructure projects weren't addressed.
Hey, Tom, great editorial in the Santa Fe New Mexican from Jonathan Hayes from Audubon Southwest. He contends the state legislature should have allocated more of its record-setting budget, as Rebecca just mentioned, to water infrastructure, arguing, quote, the fate of the next generation is directly tied to how the state adapts its water resources management today, end quote. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought the editorial, or the letter to the editor, was very well thought out. He also shared a lot of different types of research in that particular letter to the editor. The water is a part of the public trust. I don't think you can leave water to private entities to kind of handle, because then, I just don't see a positive outcome if that happens. We do have a lot of good examples, though, of federal and state-funded projects out on the eastern part of the state, specifically connecting Ute Reservoir to Clovis and that area. That's a multi-billion-dollar project. And it's something that will actually provide needs in the short term and long term for the residents there, as they're kind of working through a lot of other different issues involving with the groundwater there now. But yeah, I think to support what Laura and Rebecca have said, I think that in different aspects the legislature missed an opportunity. And for that matter, I think the governor did as well, because, the governor started off by, really supporting water in the very early parts of her term. In fact, making it a priority in that first year, which is great. It really kind of set it as a top priority for her and her administration. Now it's up to the legislature, I think, to really kind of follow through and say, okay, great, let's make some of these things a reality.
That's right.
Just because it comes from the fourth floor doesn't mean it's a great idea, but it's an idea that needs to be vetted out. And that's where I think the legislature missed it for the last couple of sessions and not really seriously addressing the issue of water in New Mexico.
Laura, real quick, just got a couple seconds here. I would think the governor and everybody else is covered because Thornburg Foundation and Water Foundation did a poll. 75% of New Mexico voters want action to ensure future generations have adequate water supply. 75%. If that isn't political cover, I don't know what is. What more do these folks need to get going on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's right up there with mom and apple pie, right?
Right.
Everybody's in favor of this. So 75% is astronomical. I think anybody would love those kinds of approval numbers. But you're right. They have plenty of cover to do this. I expect we're going to see a good amount of bills next session. We're facing a 60-day session. It's, anything and everything will be on the agenda. And so I fully expect to see a lot of bills. But in the short term, we will, as a state, have to work together to figure out how to leverage some of that federal infrastructure funding for water projects, because there's a fair amount of that in the federal bill.
That's a good point there. And the governor, of course, has announced state-run shelters for people in the areas affected, of course. And she's applied for emergency funding from the Fed. So we'll see how that works out. Difficult problem, seems to change and worsen each year. Thank you all for your thoughts on how we can better address it. We'll be back in less than 10 minutes with another discussion at the virtual roundtable as we look ahead to the primary election.